Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Art Lounge Alley. This is Drawing Comics. It's Conan Part 44. And here is where I left off last time. I'm pretty excited about this because I'm starting pages, or panels rather, that I haven't worked on before. Some of these panels I repeated, some of these panels I've done before. But this is going to be new territory. I'm really excited about this. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, what you're seeing right now, you guys have a lot of catching up to do for the story. Conan was on an adventure to infiltrate this cult leader, who's brainwashing people, is creating a bunch of chaos. This sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? And he had a bone to pick with him. There was something that he wanted to confront him about, and he made his journey. He figured out how to get there. He infiltrated. Let me see if I could bring it up, actually. He infiltrated their occult meeting, but then he got caught. Let me see if I can bring up that panel. For those panels, rather, because it's more than one. Or it could be in my other sketchbook. In my old sketchbook. Let me see how far this goes. It's a bummer, I used to do this 5 times a week. I used to do drawing comics 5 times a week. It's kind of a bummer, not really. I mean, I'm getting projects, other projects that I'm working on, so I'm pretty happy about that. But I do love doing this. This is a lot of fun. I'm having a blast every time I stream. And I really love exploring John Buscema's work like this and drawing these comics, observing them, being immersed in them for an hour at least. So that's really great. All right, it is in my other sketchbook, which is right here. All right, so yeah, you see it here. This is the beginning of the week. I figured for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, you guys can see like the progress that's been made here. So I just dedicated this the sketchbook to doing that. So here he is. He's gone on to find his cult member. He sees them. He sees them walking. He sees what they've done. They put a bunch of people on stakes like crazy people. Then he comes across this wizard who looks more like a shaman than a wizard, and they have time talking. They discuss this cult member. He's directed towards their camp. He disguises himself as one of them, and he infiltrates their meeting. These are the guards there. That's the cult leader. And he finally gets through. This is where I left off with coloring comics. So, and then eventually he's discovered. This is where the cult leader doesn't recognize him, or recognizes him, rather, that he's not one of them. And then pursues to punish him. And his punishment was to be crucified on this old tree, as you could see over here. But to his luck, as he's crucified, waiting for his death, basically, that's looming right over his head, he sees at a distance a figure coming close to him, and it's his friend. He ends up rescuing him. And here he's brought back down. He's taken down from the tree that he was crucified, and he's brought back to the wizard. And it seems like he's dying. So his friend asks the wizard to revive him. And next chapter that you see is in this book here, where the wizard does some magic and brings back Conan, which is... Where is it? Where is it? Somewhere here. Come on, show yourself, comic book panels. Some of these drawings are absolutely awful. I'm still not over how bad they are. Okay, so here it is. He does some magic work, revives them, and then they go out on a journey together this time to find this cult member. And here we are. This is the panel right here. They're climbing through, they're traversing through all sorts of terrain, climbing mountains, going through caves, trying to find this cult leader again, and this time together deal with it. Oh, we got Jarn in chat. Hey Jarn, welcome back. I think last time you might have been here for figure drawing. I don't remember, but whatever it is, welcome to Drawing Comics. If you guys have never heard of John Buscema before, if this is your first time ever seeing his work, I highly encourage you guys to check out this short flick that I created. It's in the video section. If you filter the video section based on collection, you'll see folders there. And one of them is going to be special intros. And in there, you guys can check out the very first stream of Drawing Comics, where you'll see the short flick about John Buscema. It's 5 minutes, it's not too long, but it gives you guys a brief overview of his life, you know, how he came to like drawing comics, at what age, where he studied, and eventually becoming an illustrator at Marvel. And I show you guys some of his work, some stuff that's not mainstream, some sketches that he's done. Beautiful, all beautiful work, incredible amount of work. So it's a nice little overview with some cool images for you guys to get more familiar with his work, his huge body of work, and his big contribution towards pretty much all the Marvel characters. If you guys are learning how to draw, if you're intermediate, I highly encourage you guys to pick a favorite comic book and draw from it. There's so many benefits to it, and this is something that I talk about often, but I figured, again, it's the beginning of the week, why not do a little overview, a little refresh our memory about it. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot to it. You're practicing, first of all, anatomy, right? You're figuring out how to draw the body and all sorts of perspectives, also, or all sorts of angles, which is really important. You don't want your comic book to be predictable with the same angles, same camera shots, you know, the body posing the same way. You want to bring as much diversity as possible, and the best way to learn it is from the comic books that have already been created, where that was absolutely necessary for them to be interesting, for viewers to get excited about it. So, you know, you're there, you're practicing that, you're practicing anatomy, you're also practicing face expressions, right? How to draw the face with all the different emotions and how that affects the face features, etc. You're practicing angles, you're practicing shading, you're practicing backgrounds. You know, you're practicing how to tell a story from panel to panel. You're practicing how to draw figures next to each other. So there's so much that's there for you. You know, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff when you're drawing from comics. You know, I think a lot of times people get put off when it comes to practicing because they're like, I don't know what to draw. Like, I don't know what to do. So this kind of takes care of it for you. Like, it's right there for you. All that stuff at your disposal. All you got to do is just sit down and dedicate yourself. That's one of the reasons why I'm also doing it. You know, it's an excellent way. I don't have to worry about content. You know, it's right here for me. I know what I need to practice. You're also, as you guys see, there's also opportunity to practice inking. You have to ink these things at some point. You also have to color them. So all of this is at your disposal. It's just limitless benefits from having to work from comics. And this is something that I'm doing on my free time, basically. In other instances, I think it's also important to practice from imagination. And this kind of like readies you for that. It's a warm-up. You know, you're getting the juices flowing, basically. Starting the engine. Because when it comes down to it, like eventually you're gonna have to do, you're gonna have to work on a comic book, and it could be very intimidating if it's gonna be your very first comic book. You're gonna be like, where do I start? You know, what do I do? And this kind of prepares you for it. You know, it gets your feet wet. You're gonna know, okay, it's important to first draw out the panels, you know, to make sure that it fits properly. Something I mention frequently, drawing basic shapes is a way to define parameters for the panel to make sure everything fits within its limits, within the limits of the panel. So it really helps prepare you for those big projects that you'll eventually be working on. In other news, over the weekend, I ended up finishing watching Game of Thrones. And I did watch it all the way through. So, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it, who are waiting to see it, know that from this point on, I'm going to be talking about pretty much everything that went on over there. I highly encourage you guys to watch it if you haven't. It's such an amazing show. So well done all around. Cinematography, acting, props, costumes, story, everything. A really well made show. But yeah, I ended up watching it. I watched it all the way through, but then I heard people whining about the ending, and they're like, oh, what kind of ending? I liked it. I thought it was great, actually. I thought that the ending made sense. You know, it kind of just ties into like so many different things. And I thought that, I mean, it kind of sucks that he did what he ended up doing, right? Because it was supposed to be this like great connection that they had between each other. But I get it, because I think what the dragons kind of represented, if you look at it as a metaphor, was wrath. Like, the epitome of wrath, something that will do whatever it takes, you know, to attain the goal that they set up for themselves, and especially if it's based on this, like, hatred in some ways. Totally understandable, you know, the idea that she hated the concept of slavery, but she was ready to just basically rule the world, the entire world. And after seeing what she's done to a bunch of people who were innocent, who didn't really have anything to do with the extent that Daenerys took things, the mother of dragons, and how pissed she was at the fact that, you know, her babies were basically killed one by one. And how power becomes so intoxicating. And how it all kind of just, like, it really did tie into the idea of, like, morality. The idea, the show is called Game of Thrones, where people are just, like, pursuing power, basically, the lust for power and trying to attain it, and so on and so forth. But the ending was just like, well, this is a little crazy, like, the extent that people will go and what they'll do to attain it, you know. So the final decision after everything that has went down really boils down to this idea of, like, morality, you know, like, where are things gonna go? How many people are gonna die? You know, for what reason, for what cause, and do they actually deserve it? I mean, the entire story is just about morality. If you think about, like, where it all started out from, it all started out with corruption, right? The Lannisters having a secret. It was incest, basically. And them knowing that if that gets out, if the word gets out, their father, first of all, was also a bloodlusting psycho, would just, I guess, kill them, right? I mean, he was ready to do it with Tyrion, and it's just gonna wreck their entire rule and spread all around all the other kings and so on and so forth. So they threw off that kid from the balcony because they just didn't want him to go around spreading this idea. And from there, it all just unraveled. It all just went to shit, right? Because the mother was just like, oh, I found out that he was pushed. He was pushed, and what did he see? Like, what did he see that was so bad? And then the Lannisters having to cover things up and, you know, creating all these lies and distractions and wars, creating all these wars to make sure that they're not overthrown in some way. It all just stemmed from this form of corruption. And how that one mistake, that really is obviously terrible because of, like, well, first of all, it's gross. It's super gross. Second of all, they're creating, like, they created Joffrey, who was like a complete psychopath, like literally the definition of a psychopath. And all the things that he was doing, and you could see all these, like, insane people that are just coming about and ruling because of what they were born into. You know, and this whole idea of, like, oh, if you're a male, then you inherit the kingdom after the father's death. And if you're a male, belonging to that, basically, and you're a total nut job, like Joffrey was, and him being a product of incest and stuff, like a lot of people frown upon it beyond just how gross it is. It's just, it creates lots of issues with it, mental problems and all that other stuff. So I don't want that. Then people aren't going to want that to be the continuous lineage that rules over them, especially all the atrocities that he's created, and what he did to the Starks, the amount of lying and manipulation that came from there. And perfect example of a brat, basically, right? It's just this nasty person who doesn't want to take responsibility for anything, ever. Even if they're caught red-handed, never wanting to take responsibility for it and doing whatever they can to escape it. If they have to murder people, if they have to, throw off a kid off a balcony to do it, if they have to put people's heads on stakes also that they could avoid any sort of responsibility. So, I think how interesting how that story really kind of ties into real life, despite the fact that it has these fantasy concepts like White Walkers and dragons and all this other stuff. Really, a lot of it is metaphorical for what's happening in real life, what's happening now. Oh boy, I went so far into it that I'm now noticing his back is short. There's maybe it's his hair, it's too long. But even still, I think it's might have been my fault for not paying closer attention to these things. And yeah, I think it's close to reality. It's very close to reality, and just this idea of how people, I'm sure in history, have always done the same thing. They just try to avoid responsibility for things that they've done that they know is atrocious and crazy. But rather than having to own up for it and do something about it to change it, they just continue riding the wave until their final demise. I think it's a mental disorder. You would rather die or get yourself killed than to own up for your mistakes. That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. To reevaluate yourself and just be like, those are terrible decisions. I have to make up for them somehow. I have to do something to, first of all, not be a crazy person anymore. I'm trying to correct myself. Beyond just responsibility towards others, just responsibility for myself and a state of mind that I'm in. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending. I thought it was great. That battle was pretty epic. The White Walkers. And I'm sure there's like metaphor for them as well. You know, there's guess it really depends on how you like to see it. Of course, the most obvious one is that they represent winter, the idea of winter and how brutal it could be, and what kind of catastrophes come from it. But I also want to associate them with Nazis, basically. And basically, people who are soulless. They're just full of hate, right? Like, they're just completely fueled by hate. No rationality, no reasoning, nothing. People who are just like emotionally and psychologically dead inside. Where they're just like drones, basically. They don't think for themselves. They have like this one person, right? A dictator, basically, or in the case that of the ending, there were like multiple, but there was this like main guy, and when he got destroyed, the rest of them crumbled. So I want to say it's very similar to this idea. I think there are other metaphors hidden there. I just haven't really thought about it beyond that. Like, that's the one that immediately came to me. Or the way I perceived it. I don't know if that's intentionally how it's supposed to be perceived as, but just kind of considering all those things, it sounds very close to that. I think there's like pretty much all of the characters, or the story covers all these different concepts, or morality concepts, I'm gonna say, and they all face these things, like Jon Snow losing that Ingrid, the wildling, I guess. I think she was a wildling. No, she wasn't the wildling. She was something else. I forget what they were called. But yeah, just having to realize that it was this kid. I'm gonna say maybe it was, or she was a wildling, because that kid who ended up like shooting an arrow through her hated wildlings for raiding his family and causing all that insane shit that happened. But yeah, just like Jon Snow realizing like, well, is the kid really wrong for doing that? Can you hate the kid for doing that? You know, first of all, he had no idea that they were connected in that way. Second of all, that was like the group that killed his parents, and he actually saw her, you know, shoot a bow and like off somebody in his village. So he can't just be like, you know, form of racism. Like, he actually saw that particular person committing all that atrocity. Yeah, and then yeah, all these like moral things that popped up in there, and just kind of watch it and you wonder like what would I do in that instant, you know? So it was like a really well constructed story that unraveled itself through all those through all these different characters, you know, and they're all of them having to make certain decisions and just like really thinking it through and being like, well, what would happen? But I'll say the most fun I've had watching story unravel was Arius. You know, her meeting the many-faced god, that was really cool. I absolutely loved that. That story was awesome. Something about it just kind of reminded me of like adventure games. I think the music, whenever she encountered the many-faced gods, and I guess like her having to go through all these different journeys to get there. I don't know. Something about it was really cool. Well, the many-faced god was awesome. That character was really interesting. The story was really interesting as well. So for people who are just like, I'm not watching Game of Thrones, you're missing out so much. There's like so much interesting stuff. And they're actually like little clues. Like since I've watched the new season, well, I guess it's like the new series of Game of Thrones, or like everything that built up to it. There are clues about Aegon, which is basically where the last episode of the new series ended. But what confused me a little bit, which means I got to rewatch it, is there were two Aegons, because I remember the Targaryens, right? They were Targaryen. Dad, he ended up like marrying his daughter's friend, and she had a kid, and I think she named him Aegon. And then his daughter ended up having a kid, and I think that was with her uncle, right? Gross again. It's like this incestual shit. And I think she named him Aegon. And I think that's who it probably is about. Like, there are little hints throughout Game of Thrones talking about Aegon, and the throne itself is Aegon's throne. So it's kind of cool that there are just these little hints. There's a point where that little girl that gets burnt at the stake by the witch. Just such a crazy scenario. I can't believe the parents are just like standing there watching that happen. But that's another tale of corruption and yeah. But yeah, that girl, while she was teaching the pirate how to read, she brings up the story of how kind of unraveled and what happened. So they're just little cues there, which is fun. It's fun to like watch the series all over again, and knowing what happens in the new series kind of makes it a whole new experience. You know, you're reflecting back on that a little bit. No, those bangs are a little too close. This is one of those instances where tiny little lines make a huge, huge difference. Like the direction of the lines also makes a huge difference. I don't want to give it, like, it looks like he has lipstick on. I'm kind of trying to avoid that. But because I've gone over that line so many times, it just smudged. And because it's smudged, it makes it look like he has lipstick. No matter like how many times I correct it. Damn it. I just have to be extra careful next time for the next panel before going into it. I kind of rushed it. I felt really satisfied with how things ended up lining up, you know, with using all these basic shapes, and I was like, this looks pretty good. Let me just jump into detail. And then there are all these problems that started popping up. But I think, man, it's kind of hard to decide. I'm going to say the Many-Faced God was pretty awesome. That's my number one favorite character. Then it's going to be Tyrion. Tyrion was just such a great character, man. I don't know. All around, I thought he was awesome. Even though he's a Lannister, right? But still, it doesn't matter. It's just about who he was. And that's kind of like what the struggle of it all was for him. But great character. Absolutely loved it. I loved watching his the scenes with him. Great actor. Peter Dinklage, I believe his name is. Great actor. Did such a great job. Then Arya, and then I'm gonna say Snow, Jon Snow. In other news, I've been moving away from all things meta. So like anything that's meta, I'm not using it. or I'm using it very, very minimally and just switching over to other social media platforms, because absolutely, like, I think that is like one of the most essential things that people can do right now. Considering, and this is something that I was talking about before and I absolutely knew it was heading in that direction, is like all these capitalist fascists trying to silence any sort of resistance towards their absolutely insane behavior. Like, and there's spite because they're being silenced, right? So because there's a lot of people who are just like calling them out for being crazy, and then their spite starts to pour into that stuff, and this guy's like enabling more fascists. Like right after he took over and he lifted all sorts of bans and shit, all this shit started to pour in. So I'm absolutely not supporting that. You know, I'm not supporting him, that's for sure. Another fascist, another Nazi lover. And that's one of the ways that we could all do. You know, just moving away from that and not supporting it if you are not one of them. You know, move on to social media, demand better social media that has much better monitoring. You know, for instance, they should not have any spam accounts, because that's what emboldens people to like create spam accounts, start flooding comments. Like basically whenever there's something that's wrong, they just start flooding with all sorts of spam to prevent any good comments from being at the top, silencing other comments by third-party apps. So like Meta and like Instagram, they're well known for allowing that. You know, and they don't really care to monitor that. There's like all sorts of third-party apps that allow people to do things like that. Harass people, bully people, like all that stuff, using fake accounts, bot accounts. I think there should be social media. Like, I'm not saying that all social media should have strict guidelines for it, but I think that there should be a couple of social media platforms that do. So for those who don't want that stuff, they can go to that platform and actually have like meaningful, progressive conversations, sharing ideas and such like that. But I think that's really essential. You know, they have their own platform. These Nazis have their own platform. They plot all sorts of stuff, spread all sorts of misinformation, which is another problem. Like Twitter now is allowing all sorts of misinformation about COVID, about other things as well. There's like all that stuff is not being monitored. So more gaslighting, more bullshit. And that's a huge problem. So we need social media platform that champions that and really prevents misinformation. It's a place where people actually share facts and ideas, not hate and all this like bullshit. So I've been doing that. I've been switching over to other platforms. I refuse to contribute to that. I refuse to put more money in their pockets. I mean, what we really need to do is protest, like you're seeing in Iran. Like, they just recently, after like months of protesting, what's it been, like two months now that they've been protesting, they abolished the morality police, which has nothing to do with morality. Like, they're beating and killing people over stupid things. Like, how moral is that? It's just like another gaslighting tactic of like naming something morality, which allows them to do all sorts of corrupt stuff. And making other people feel as if though they're in the wrong because the morality police is after them. Like, get out of here. But yeah, they've been protesting and they got that out. You know, it's important to just be consistent do it consecutively. Like they've been doing it every day. And the way that they were doing it, I'm sure, is by rotating protest groups. Like 1,000 people is group A, another 1,000 people is group B. When A gets tired, B takes over, then C takes over, etc., etc., etc. Like, that's the way to do it. And we got to start demanding that change. We got to start demanding livable wages, and as I mentioned very frequently, livable hours at work. So instead of 15 hours, it would be 5 hours, which really adds up to be 8 considering travel. You know, you're not traveling for fun. You're traveling to get to work. So that's another, by average, like an hour. So an hour there, an hour back, plus 5 hours, that's 7 hours. Some people have to do it an hour and a half both ways, which really ends up being 8 hours. But regardless, people should be working only 5 hours to be able to enjoy life, because something that I talk about very frequently is, as I mentioned, from the time you get up to the time you get home and you're done with things like showering, eating, you know, just unwinding for just a little bit, let's say for like half an hour, you're left with 2 hours. And just spend some time on social media and you'll see how quickly that hour or 2 is gone. And you know, you if you want to pick up an instrument, if you want to learn something new, if you want to go and take class, if you want to enjoy your time with your family or go out and hang out with friends, forget it. Why? Because they want to exploit you for profits. That is not an American reality. You know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, down the toilet. What are you? That's not even there. You know, you're just being exploited, basically. Where's your opportunity to pursue happiness when all you're doing is working for some exploitive company that makes you walk on eggshells all the time, threatening your job position, not giving you any raises, telling you to go back into the office in the middle of a killer virus? I'm never going to forget that. That's ridiculous. That was crazy. But it unveiled the truth. It's unveiled. I just combined unveiled and revealed. But yeah, it revealed the truth about what's really going on. And what kind of people we actually have taking quote-unquote charge. And what an insane amount of Nazis we have. Huge problem. And that's one of the reasons why we have to protest. Like, I don't know how many examples people need to see of like where that ends up happening if it's left unchecked. And how crazy it gets. I think people are so comfortable that they just can't imagine what it's like until it happens. And then it becomes even harder to reverse. But anyways, one of the ways that I'm not contributing to that and resisting it is by absolutely not using any of the apps or services that are funded by people who enable all this stuff, like enabling like again, Netflix, the fact that they raised prices. What was there, a Netflix shortage? You know, the people suddenly say like, oh, you know, the satellite signal, yeah, we really have to up the price for that. It's a satellite signal. And they're getting millions of dollars. Like, think about it, right? $15 a month from all the people all over the world. It's not just in the States. Netflix is everywhere. So that company is racking in trillions of dollars, trillions per month, because you're paying per month. So every month, trillions of people are paying them $15, and they still had to up the price. That's not inflation, that's greed. That's corporate fascism. So I absolutely am not ever joining Netflix, ever. I don't care what's on there. There's plenty of other things around. not contributing a single penny to them, or any other company that does things like that or supports it. Stopped using Spotify. I don't use Spotify. I use Apple Music after that whole like racist slurs coming from people on there, and then Spotify not doing anything about it or wanting to remove any of them information, the lies that are being spread through there, and the racism that's coming from there. They didn't care. They're just like, we just want our profits. And that's what continues to enable it. If nobody takes any action, if these platforms that are enabling that to continue, they're contributing towards the problem. They don't care. They want it to get as bad as it will. So I stopped doing that and not using that anymore. And I'm totally fine. You know, I'm not suffering at all here. I'm not like, oh my God, I really miss. No. In fact, I'm a lot happier knowing I'm not supporting that nasty business practice. If I find out a company's like backing corruption, I'm out. If they're funding Nazis, if they're funding greedy companies that are exploiting workers, you know, it's like there's a crazy amount of inflation and these companies still don't want to pay people. Now there's like that railroad strike thing that happened. People are like, look, it's a pandemic, people are going to get sick. We want paid sick leave. Like, we got to pay our bills. No. Even from Democrats. So, you know, something I was talking about before about Two Wings helping, supporting the body. Two Wings supporting the body and flapping away with her taxes. Meanwhile, these people who are making up the economy, literally, the railroad industry allows all this stuff to continue to flow through the economy. They don't care. Those people don't even deserve to have like sick leave, paid leave, or raises. Like, they barely probably gave them anything. So we got a lot of issues. And to wait on politicians to do it when this is their answer, you know, they're like, oh, vote, because we'll be the ones who champion, like, you know, the voices of the people. Vote for us. We vote them in to do it. They don't do anything about it. So we got to take it upon ourselves to start protesting, like I mentioned it. How it is in Iran, the way that they're protesting there, shutting down the economy, the way that they did it in 1800s. To attain 8 hours when work environments were 11 and child labor was like a common thing. They shut down the economy. They banded together, protested, and said, fuck your profits, man. Until you make this law, you're not seeing a penny. And what happened? It happened. You know, they shut down the economy, actually. It all collapsed because they weren't being met. And then eventually they had to enact it in order for things to get back to normal. Somewhat normal. So it's that time. You know, we got to do it again because people have reached that level of insanity where they just don't care about anything other than themselves and profits, and they're enabling fascism and supporting white supremacy and Nazis. Like, who's gonna fix all that? They're not doing it. We as people have to come together and start doing things. I think a lot of people are just in denial about it, and they're hoping that, oh, well, the government's gonna do something, these politicians are... No. Nope. Well, everybody, that was tonight's stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I had a blast talking about all this figure drawing, basic stuff, talking about John Buscema, Game of Thrones, all this political insanity. It's still, I think it's important to talk about. I think it's important for you guys to talk about it with your friends, share these ideas and concepts and solutions, come up with other stuff, whatever it is. Getting the conversation going, I think, is really, really important. Getting the conversation about how to solve these things is really important. Spreading it around that we need to protest, I think that's really important as well, considering all this stuff. But anyways, yeah, if you guys did enjoy this content, just remember to hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, you guys are open to ask any questions, make some comments, discuss things, share your opinions, share your thoughts on any of this stuff. I'm always open to it. I'm looking forward to reading some of your comments, reading some of the things that you guys have thought about and come up with. Yeah, tune back in. I'll be back tomorrow, same time and place, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for Figure Drawing Basics. 9 p.m. I'm going to be doing my project stream, so tune in then for that. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you